Hey guys, today we have Andy Ionescu with us, and he is going to tell us all about his journey from communist Romania. It starts multiple generations back in your family, before communism came to Romania, and I am just so thankful that you would come and share your story with us today. So with that being said, there's a lot that happened from your grandfather and on, but I'm interested in what Romania was like before communism came to the country.
Hi, thank you for having me here. So before communism came to Romania, Romania was like one of the most promising democratic countries in Eastern Europe. It was a democracy. We had a king, we had political parties, we had free elections, we had everything that civilized Western countries have. The economy was strong. All that changed during the war, and after the war, when the country was occupied by the Soviet Union at the end of the war, they imposed a communist regime on Romanians. So they had falsified elections. The Communist Party in 1945, at the elections, the Communist Party was only about 10,000 people strong in a country that had around 14, 15 million people. So it was it was practically insignificant.
Yeah.
But that didn't matter, because it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts the votes.
Interesting.
So they won the election, and then everything changed. My grandfather was a farmer, a small, I wouldn't say even a farmer. He was more like a peasant, I would say. He was owning a couple of acres of land. And he was working his land with his family. And somehow the communists decided, because he was also tending the village convenience store, like a 7-Eleven in the United States, they decided he was a capitalist. He was kulak, okay? Actually, they had another term for kulak in Romania. It's called chiabur. It's the same thing as kulak in Ukraine. So they arrested him. They put him in prison, and they only released him when he got TB and he was too sick to be used as a slave labor. My father, when my grandfather was arrested, he ran away from home. He simply disappeared.
For his safety?
For his safety, because they were looking for him to arrest him too, because he was only like 18 or 19 years old at the time.
Now, why is that though? Did they see a threat in the children of who they
Yes.
considered enemies of the state?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it was enough that he was the progeny of chiabur.
Yeah.
So he ran away. He worked under an assumed name. Then he was adopted by an aunt, changed his name to Ionescu, which is basically my last name is not my real last name. Mm-hmm. It just got left like that from that time.
I see.
Because my father didn't change his last name back.
Okay.
Okay, and then he finally he tried to go to college, mm-hmm. and the communists finally caught up with him. He was in the senior year in college. When they identify him, they kick him out of school, and he, instead of becoming an engineer, he became a machinist.
Okay, and what time period was this? Around what year?
A couple of years before I was born, and probably they caught up with him in around late 1950s, early 1960s. I'm born in 63. It's 1962, that's when the first dictator of Romania died, Gheorghe Gheorghiu-Deș. In 1964, I believe, or 1965, Ceaușescu came to power as a young communist reformer. Little did they know that he was the complete opposite. But he practically released all political prisoners from prisons, from jails, trying to look like a reformer. And well, a couple of years later, all that changed.
Okay. Now, so that's like 15 to 20 years before he comes into power after World War II ends. Can you let us know, did your grandfather ever pass down what it was like to see the communists on the rise? I mean, if they only had 10,000 people in the party, that makes me concerned because of groups like Democratic Socialists of America, for example. In our country, they'll post something on Instagram now, and it'll say, we're excited, we now have 80,000 dues-paying members. And that's an organization where they're proud to talk about ending private companies. They're proud to talk about these communist values that they hope to achieve, but of course under the distracting name Democratic Socialists. So what was that like to see this tiny minority rise up? Were they using the chaos post-war to do so, or what was the transition like?
I didn't hear this kind of stuff from my grandfather because I was very little, probably like 3 or 4 years old when he passed away. But I heard it from my father. And my father, you know, before the communists came to power, he was very young. In 1944, 1945, it was still okay, 1946. So he was young, 18, 19, 20 years old, and this before they arrested his father, my grandfather. He was actually pretty enthralled by, you know, all this socialist, all this equality between the people, because it's very appealing. Okay, it's very appealing. I mean, who doesn't want all people to be equal, to have equal opportunities, to share the same wealth, to have this, you know, the same not only material wealth, but the same opportunities to become themselves, right? It's very, very appealing. But that's not, he quickly realized that it wasn't what they were selling, you know. In 1945, the students, actually in 1947, the students came out in a protest in Bucharest, in the capital. And in contrast with what's happening with the students in today's America, they were they had the opposing values. Students at that time, they knew what, I mean, they were smart, they knew what communism was about, even if they didn't ever live through communism. So they came out in a big protest in Bucharest, supporting the king, who was at the time still in Romania. They didn't force him to abdicate yet. So they came in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in Bucharest. And what happened? The communists, they had their shock troops, the so-called workers from factories. They transported them in the plaza where the protest was taking place, and they started beating the students. They started arresting them, and they acted like Antifa is doing today, you know. And they arrested about 10,000 of them.
Wow.
And they put them in jail. And the leader of the Communist Party at the time, Gheorghe Gheorghiu-Deș, went to the king and said, you know what, we're going to try them for treason, and we're going to find them guilty, and we're going to shoot them, unless you sign this paper. And the paper was the king's abdication and the proclamation of the Socialist Republic of Romania.
And he signed it?
He signed it to save 10,000 students.
And what happened to the king?
I think in like 24 hours, they put him in a train with his family, and he left to Switzerland, where he became a car mechanic. From a king to a car mechanic. This is how he earned his living.
I'm surprised they let him live. I was expecting
Yeah, well,
story.
They had to let him live because he was one of the Queen of England's nephews. He was blood related with the Queen.
I see.
Okay, so...
Now, what year do you remember was your grandfather's farm taken?
1947.
Can we talk about the concept of, it's something that gets glossed over a lot. Mm-hmm. The idea that you have something, you work for something, your family is raised on it, you put your heart and soul into it, whether it's a piece of land or a property or a home. And the idea that someone could come and take that from you in the name of social justice or in the name of equality, it's being normalized here in America. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that we've ever really faced before. It's glossed over all the time. And I really want to paint a very vivid picture for young people of what that's like to have something like that taken from you. What did they do to actually come take the property? Because in countries like Venezuela, they used the bureaucracy, right? They came in and they had all these regulations that they would say the business is in violation of. But in Cuba, it was more of a seizing the farms in a violent way.
What they did, they passed a law. They passed a law saying that you had to contribute with a certain amount of produce or meat or animals, give it to the state for the common good for free, for no paid. So my grandfather, he didn't started, he was never a rich man. He started as a peasant. He went to a trade school. He learned how to be a mechanic. He built himself some sort of harvesting machine that he built it from parts. And then he started to work for other farmers with his harvest combine. Okay, and this is how he made a little bit of money. He bought a piece of land. Then he started working with his family, with his wife, with my father and his sister. Okay, and all of a sudden the communists are coming and they say, you have to give us this much of what you're producing. Well, in 1946, 1947, 1948, it was like 3 years of very, very bad drought and famine. Well, that didn't matter for the communists. He had to give that many pounds of meats, that many kilograms of wheat, and so on and so forth. And if he didn't, that means that meant he was an enemy of the people. He tried to hoard the produce and starve the workers in the cities, and that was treason against the socialist order. Mm-hmm. So they simply said, you are hoarding. You're hoarding, you are the enemy of the people, you don't want the workers in the cities to be fed, and we're going to put you in prison for that.
Okay. And so that was one of the first things they did, right?
Yes.
To instill that.
And then they started the collectivization, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, and which was done with the rifle and with a cannon in some regions of Romania. Some people, they willingly gave their, very few of them actually, they believe in all this propaganda, and they gave up their land, but very few. In some other regions, there were some opposition, and some other regions of the country, they actually had to go, round them up, shoot them, or they went with the cannons, and they fire cannons, and they destroy villages.
And that was if you refused to give your property
exactly.
to the control.
Where people organized, where villages organized and tried to fight against them, they went in with cannons in tanks and they wiped them out.
Okay. Now, I've seen another interview that you've done where you talk about another one of the first things they did, was take the guns.
Yes.
You have some interesting stories on that. Can you tell us more about what happened right after World War II?
One of the first law that the communists passed after they came to power was a gun registration law, and following immediately, like after maybe less than a year, of a gun confiscation law. So they went like this: okay, we went through this war. Now people are sick and tired of violence. Now we are living in a socialist republic. It's a popular republic. It wasn't called socialist. Okay, for some reason they avoided the word socialist because Romanians were very anti-communist to their core.
Well, it's like Castro. He refused the title for so long.
Yeah, and they called themselves Popular Republic of Romania, or Workers' Republic. And they say, well, who's gonna, you don't have to be afraid of the government. We are you. The people are in charge of the country. We don't need guns from now on. So a lot of people, they surrender. Most of the people, they surrender. My grandfather surrendered his guns. He had a double-barrel shotgun and a Luger pistol that he retrieved from next to the rail tracks. When the Germans were retreating in 1944, they were throwing all kind of stuff, to travel light back to Germany, where they were going back home. So my grandfather found it by the rail tracks. So he had this Luger pistol and a shotgun, and he voluntarily surrendered them. And then, like just a couple of years later, after the communists made sure that the people cannot fight back, they started arresting them.
And why would they arrest the people?
Because when somebody comes and takes something from you, okay, that belongs to you, that you worked and you put in your life and your sweat and your tears in it, you probably try to fight back. And if you don't have the guns to fight back, they're just coming and take it, and they put you in prison. They do with you whatever they like.
Okay.
To do.
Now, getting back to your story, your grandfather was the peasant farmer, had his land taken. What about your father? And then when do you come into the picture? What's your first memory of life?
My father, after they arrested his father, I was telling you, he changed his name. He became Ionescu, Ferdinand. And he worked in one of those communist building, like grandiose building projects, the Danube to the Black Sea Canal. He worked there for a couple of years, and then he went to college, and he was kicked out. He married my mother, and I was born in 1963. That's when. What do I remember? I remember being raised not as much as by my mother, but by her sister, with my uncle and my two cousins in Constanța. It's a city by the Black Sea. My uncle was a merchant marine. He was part of the first Romanian crew that circumnavigated the globe. They had a stop in communist China, where Mao was in power. And I remember him coming home with a grocery shopping bag with Mao's little books that were gifted by the communist authorities over there. Tried to spread Mao's world all over the world. As a child, I kind of didn't have, bad memories. I was in a good family. Luckily for us, my uncle being a merchant marine, he had contacts with the West, going in England, in France, in Greece, in Turkey, and he was bringing stuff home, providing, buying, for example, blue jeans or American cigarettes or bubble gum, or you name it, stuff that we didn't had in Romania, and selling it on the black market. And I would say it was a happy childhood in the first. But then I went to school, and then we started from the first grade. That's when the propaganda started. We had the portraits of the leaders of the Communist Party on the wall. We were supposed to know each names and function in the Communist Party. We were instructed to tell the teacher whatever if we were hearing our parents or our relatives, if they were saying something against the party or their leader at home. We're supposed to be snitches, but of course, our parents and my uncle and my aunt, they trained us. They knew what they were, what the teachers were asking of us.
That's what I'm curious about, because if your uncle's going out and seeing what the West looks like,
right?
Did he ever come back and say it's a lot different, or was he careful around the kids?
He didn't had to say anything like that.
It was just obvious.
It was just obvious. Coming home with all that good stuff, with bubble gum, with jeans, with a bottle of Coca-Cola that we couldn't find. It was obvious. Yeah. He didn't have to tell us.
So you said you had a happy childhood, but was there an issue in terms of just basic nutrition? I mean, you had the ration cards, you had
the ration cards came later. Okay, because in socialism, the first years of socialism, the regime lives off the fat of capitalism.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so I hope this is not going to happen to the United States. This is not going to be a gradual, it's not going to be a sudden in America if this is going to happen. And unfortunately, I think it will. It's not going to be like a sudden descent into poverty and bread lines and stuff like that. It's going to be gradual.
Yeah.
Okay? First, you're not going to find certain stuff. Then all of a sudden, the gasoline has become more expensive. Q for today. And then all of a sudden, some gas stations are not going to have gas. And the government is going to tell you, well, that's because you are burning too much gas. You're having too many cars. And then all of a sudden, they're going to say, you know what, we have to remedy this problem by putting the gasoline on ration cards and the food on ration cards. And it's going to happen over the years, little by little. Like the frog, you boil the frog, you turn the heat little by little.
Wow, so you came of age as things got worse and worse.
The things were getting worse and worse. I remember when I was a kid, my aunt, my uncle, they were saying, okay, you go to the grocery and get a pound of meat and 2 pounds of feta cheese and, and all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, gradually, I was going there and the salesperson at the grocery store said, we are out of cheese today. When are you going to get it? I don't know, maybe next week, okay? And next week becomes next month. And all of a sudden, we couldn't find cooking oil and sugar. And all of a sudden, we couldn't find, we didn't have a car, but we had neighbors who had a car. And they were saying, well, I went to the gas station, they had gasoline today. So it was little by little. By the time I became a teenager and then a young adult, all this stuff disappeared, okay? Everything, like everything that you take for granted today in your home, in your household, becomes a struggle to obtain. And it's not only the food, but it's also soap, toilet paper, shampoo, sugar, you name it. If I would have to make a list of things that we didn't have, or it was a struggle to obtain, and the list of things that we could obtain, the list of the things that we could obtain would be like one of 100 times smaller than the things that we couldn't obtain freely. They were rationed, think about one morning you want to go take a shower, okay, and you don't have shampoo. You're out of shampoo, and you cannot find it. What are you going to do? You don't have soap. You don't have toilet paper in your bathroom. Okay, all this you either had to struggle to stay in long lines and get them if you're lucky, or buy them like 5 times the price on the black market.
Now, what about this with the larger items? I mean, you said you didn't have a car for your family?
No, a car was supposed to be a luxury. Only one in 30 families were supposed to have a car in Romania. To buy a car was going like this. First, you had to save 70,000. There was 70,000 lei. That was the equivalent of the average salary was about 2,000 lei a month, and the car, it was 70,000. So how many years you had to put your entire salary in the savings account to get a car? I think about 5 years. About 5 years, and you didn't, like, you put your entire income and you don't count the rent, you don't count the food that you have to buy, you don't have the daily necessities, that, expenses, heating and all that stuff, because contrary to what the kid believes, nothing is free in socialism. You still have to pay. You still have to pay for rent, you still have to pay for food, nobody's providing those for you. So you have to put every little penny that you earn in a savings account for, say, 5 years, okay, if you are making average income. In that savings account, which is specially designated by the state as a car savings account, okay, the moment you reach that number, magic number, 70,000, then you file the paperwork to buy a car, okay? And when you file the paperwork to buy a car, you get in line. And the line to get a car, oh, by the way, those money goes to the factory that produces the car, so they don't belong to you. The line to get a car after that moment, it's about 6 to 7 years.
Wow.
Okay, so 5 plus 7, that's about 12 years. Okay, after 12 years, you get a letter from the car manufacturer, the one and only car manufacturer that has only one dealership at the factory gate, and you go there to get your car, and they take you in and they say, well, congratulations, you got a new car. That's your car. And you say, well, that's a green car. I don't want a green car. I want a blue car or a red car. And they say, well, tough luck, buddy. Tough luck, comrade. Our factory only produces green cars this month. Okay, so if you want a red one or a blue one, you should come back in a year or two. Okay, when that color is going to be available.
So then you get the car.
You get the car.
What about the gas? Is there a ration on that as well now?
You don't get you get like maybe 10 liters of gasoline in the car. So you have to come from home with a jerry can full of gasoline, because the gasoline is rationed. But if you don't have a car, how are you going to get the gasoline? Because you have to get the car in order to get a ration card for gasoline. So you have to talk with the neighbor who has a car to give you some gasoline in a jerry can, so you can take your car from the factory. Because you're gonna, with 10 liters of gasoline, you're gonna make like 150 miles, and then you pour the rest of the gasoline that you brought with you, and you get your car home. And then you have to register it with the police. There was no DMV, it was just the police. And they give you the license plates. And the license plates, you had, by the way, it was 10 liters of gasoline, the ration a month. So in order to go to a vacation, 10 liters of gasoline, what's that,
not a lot.
3-4 gallons of gas?
Yeah, not a lot.
A month. So in order to live in a vacation a couple of 100 miles away from home, you had to save your gasoline in jerry cans for a couple of months, to be able to go back and forth. And you had the license plates, and the license plates, if the last number on your license plate was an even number, you were allowed to use your car in the first and the third weekend of the month.
At all? Or to do extended travel?
No, anything. Any kind of travel.
So you couldn't be caught on the road with the wrong license plate number?
Right.
Wow.
If it was an odd, you were able to travel in the weekend, Sundays, only Sundays. Saturday wasn't an off day, it was a work day.
Why is that? Was that for control, or was it to limit resources?
To limit the consumption of gasoline. And liberals today will say, well, that's good for the environment, but yeah, to limit the domestic consumptions of fuel.
Okay. Back then, did they ever use environmental excuses, or was it just the limitation on resources?
It was just the limitation on resources.
They hadn't come up with that plan yet.
No, the green thing wasn't a thing in that period.
Okay. Have you heard of, back then, what I love to read about is how they used the ploy of women's empowerment to get women into the workforce, when in reality they were just trying to double the workforce. They weren't actually set to empower women at all. No. Did you have that kind of language back then? Because they did have the propaganda, but it's always different.
Women had to work because you couldn't make ends meet. It was like poverty. And with only one salary in the household, it was very, very hard to live. And contrary to what these kids believe, it was a lot of sexism and abuse. My wife can attest to that. And
what do you mean by that?
Like at the workplace, the party activist was taking advantage of women, and that happened to my wife at work. They were always skipped for promotion. Okay, very rarely, very, very rarely, women were promoted in leadership positions. Very, very rarely.
Now, if women are basically required to go to work, what about
they
the
were
kids?
not required to go to work, but to sustain the family, they had to.
So then what about the kids? Who was watching young children?
The party.
Was it like a state-run daycare?
If you were not lucky enough to have the grandparents around, they were put in extended hour daycares. Okay, and I was in for a year of my life when my parents divorced. Before I was sent to my uncle and my aunt. When my parents divorced, they were forced to put me in one of these extended hours daycares. So they were dropping me at 7 in the morning and leaving me there until 7 or 8 p.m. And sometimes just living, they had dormitories there, and they could leave me there for an entire week.
So you mentioned earlier the indoctrination in the schools. Let's get more into that. Did the indoctrination start as early as daycare, or when did you really start to notice certain propaganda in schools?
Immediately after the kids were in school, even in preschool. Even in preschool, they came. They came with this homeland hawks. That's how they call the preschool youth organization. Okay, they were calling this organization the Youth Show Me Patrie, which was kind of like the homeland hawks. Okay, and they had this stupid orange jackets and navy blue pants or skirts for the girls, and hats, and they were teaching kids how to recite patriotic songs, which basically they were calling them patriotic songs, but they were always songs about the Communist Party and the dear leader. But that has nothing to do with the real patriotism, okay? But they were like propaganda, and they had to recite them. And then after, in the first grade in school, they were becoming pioneers. I would put here like scouts, something like that.
Okay, like Boy Scouts?
Yeah, like boys, but they were also political. And they had white shirts and navy blue pants or skirts, and they had a scarf, a red scarf symbolizing communism, with the tricolor, red, yellow, and blue, which was the flag of the country. And the same thing continued. You had to learn the altered history of the country, how the Communist Party saved Romania from imperialism, from communism, how the Soviet Union is the great friend from the East, how they liberated us, how the party leader is the wisest, the most beloved, the perfect Romanian, how his wife, Elena Ceaușescu, was a world-renowned scientist. She had a 4th grade education, okay, and she was a chemist with a 4th grade education, renowned, and she was awarded all kind of honorary degrees from all kind of universities. She was collecting those stuff. So you had to know all that. You had to learn at school. All this, how kind she is, how she's the mother of the children. Okay, not your mom, not your parents. She was the one taking care of you, not your family.
Interesting.
Okay.
Was there other anti-family unit language being pushed on you guys to support the government and the collective over like your mom and dad and your individual family unit?
It was the party was, the party was, the most important thing in your life, and its leaders, Ceaușescu and Elena, they were your parents, not your parents.
Wow.
Okay, that's what you learned over there. Of course, don't get me wrong about this. I don't think anybody believed. I mean, not even the children. I didn't believe that. I don't know about other children, but of all my friends, they were indoctrinating us in school, and on the way back to home, we were laughing about it.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I don't think
we do that with COVID now.
I don't think even the people who were trying to indoctrinate us, they believed what they're trying to indoctrinate. Nobody believed anything of that. you know.
So what I'm curious about, I remember we interviewed someone from Cuba, and he was a young boy, maybe 9 or 10, when the USSR fell. And he remembers being so ingrained into the mindset that they were the greatest, that when they fell, he went home and he said, if everything goes wrong and if America comes to our shores to invade us, the evil West, I'm going to kill myself. And a 9-year-old told his mom that because he was so scared about the USSR falling. And he was like, that is socialism, the indoctrination of a young brain like that. So it's interesting. He was really into it. You guys are saying that the kids knew it was fake.
Not us.
Where was that line between parents being able to trust the kids? Was it once they understood they were mature enough to not rat their parents out?
Yeah, that they were, from the youngest age, the parents were telling, listen, you keep your mouth shut at school, and you never tell anybody what you hear in the home, okay? And nobody believed what they were selling, okay? Let me tell you that from all my friends, from all my relatives, nobody believed what they were selling, absolutely. We went... I remember being in the military, and they were telling us, well, how are we going to defend, I was in the Navy, Romanian Navy, and how are we going to defend if they attack us, if NATO attacks us, what are we going to do with this? It was early 1980s, and we had military equipment, designed by the Russians in the 1940s. And we were laughing about it, and we were saying, all they have to do, okay, for us to surrender, is to airdrop blue jeans, whiskey, and American cigarettes on us. Not bombs.
Yeah.
Not a nuclear bomb, just, drop on us whatever we don't have, and we're going to gladly surrender. This was the mentality of young people serving in the armed forces.
So actually, that brings back something that I noticed about your story. So everybody was required to join the military? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was mandatory draft.
So you got drafted.
Once you turn 18, you were required to serve in different branches of the military. Whereas I was in the Navy, that was the longest term to serve, 2 years. Other branches, they were 1 year and 8 months. And if you were accepted into college, whether you were a young woman or a boy, a young man, you were serving only, I believe, 6 to 7 months. And then you were continuing your education.
Now, people these days talk about woke politics in America's military. You have diversity, equity, and inclusion training. I have family members that are in the military that have told me about what it's like, and you just sit in the room and you get told that because of your race or your class or your gender, you're oppressing people in a certain way and you need to watch it. And what I've heard is so similar to what you were saying when you had your propaganda training once you enter the military, and basically everybody just kind of sits there and waits for it to end. Can you explain what that was like? Because also, have you heard the story, Sebastian Gorka, who is very active in especially Eastern European politics back then, his family's from there. He shared with me a story that the National Defense University, NDU, which trains America's top military officials and foreign affairs officials, trains them how to be the best they can be. And they recently hosted a speaker that told the people in the lecture hall the best way to fight communist China and prepare for them is to embrace democratic socialism. Now that's educating our top military officials. So that really concerns me, especially when it's a taxpayer-funded university for our top officials to teach them how to be the best on the world stage. Does that relate to anything you experienced, or what kind of concerns do you have with that being said?
Well, they tried to indoctrinate us in the military. The indoctrination never stopped. I mean, it was from the earliest stage, from preschool all the way to college, and when you finished your education, and even after you went into the workforce, you still there were mandatory party meetings, that you had to attend, and I can't remember exactly how they were calling, but whenever Ceaușescu was giving a speech, there was mandatory to go and watch it and then have discussions about what he said, what he proposed and stuff like that. I remember in the military when I went into the Navy, and it was one of the worst things that, you know, we had boot camp for about 2 months. And after daily training, there was a couple of hours after all marching and goose stepping and crawling through mud, and all you want is you are so tired. All you want is to hit the bunk and sleep for a couple of hours. But no, you had to attend a mandatory 2-hour indoctrination class after the boot camp, in which you had to train up for 6 hours and then another 2 hours just sitting in a classroom, barely being able to keep your eyes open, and your head was always like this, under the supervision of the political commissar, and you had to listen to Ceaușescu's speeches on a TV and listen to the political commissar droning about bright future and stuff like that. And only after that you were allowed to get off that classroom and take a shower, and you go and have your lunch or dinner or whatever, you know. So it was one of the worst things after all that training and all that mud and all that running and gas mask on your face. You had to take another 2 hours of political indoctrination in a classroom, when you were like, you couldn't even imagine how tired and how bad it was.
And it really shows how weak the regime was if all the members of the military are rolling their eyes secretly at the propaganda. Now, you were getting propaganda about the greatness of the party, but were you also hearing lies about the West and greatness about the USSR, or what were you hearing about the East versus the West?
Well, by the time I was in the military, USSR kind of wasn't a great friend from the East. They kind of changed the tune because Ceaușescu wanted to be regarded like the rebel of the communist bloc. Of course, that was just a ploy.
What a title.
Yeah, because they wanted actually the Russians wanted him to act like that because the West, they wouldn't do business with them, wouldn't sell them technology. And Ceaușescu, being like posing as a rebel, he was given access to all kind of good stuff, technology from the West, which was in turn passing it to the Soviet behind the Western countries' back. What we were hearing about America all the time was they're gonna nuke us, okay, and they are full of homeless people, okay, in the streets, and drug addicts. And everything capitalism is about exploitation of the working class. And if you go there, you're gonna be the most unhappy person that ever existed. It's gonna be your worst mistake, okay, to try to escape over there. And the life is a continuous struggle in the West. This was basically, the propaganda. They were painting the West as hell on earth, okay? And they were painting socialist countries as the workers' paradise. It was kind of contradictory because if you were trying to travel to the West, they were doing all they could to keep you, if you were trying to escape, they were shooting you in the back of the border.
Okay, so you could not leave the country.
No, you could not leave the country, and unless you were like my uncle, He was in the Merchant Marine, and he had his dossier, perfect. And or you were an airline pilot, or you were somebody from the party upper crust. That's when you could travel. But yeah, you could travel, for example, to the Soviet Union or to Hungary, to socialist Hungary, or to neighboring Bulgaria, to the south, People's Republic of Bulgaria, or anywhere in the Eastern Bloc.
Now, actually,
friendly countries.
Did you hear positive things about those countries? And similar to that, did you hear positive things about Mao's China? Or what were you hearing about the other regimes going on?
What we were hearing about them, they were as miserable as us.
Really?
Yeah.
But that was kind of under the table talk?
Yeah, because, for example, my mother he traveled to USSR a couple of times. I traveled to Bulgaria a couple of times. My uncle, he was Hungarian, and he traveled to Hungary a couple of times. And all these countries, they had pluses and minuses. They had different strains of the same communist virus, okay? I would say Romania was, from what I heard, compared to the neighboring countries, perhaps we had it the worst, because besides the lack of food and heat in the winter and the propaganda, it was also Ceaușescu cult of personality. There were, and the lack of entertainment and the lack of, it was dehumanizing.
Yeah.
You turn on your TV, this started happening in the 80s. After we were talking earlier about Dallas, okay? I think that was the last, Dallas was one of the last TV series that they run on Romanian television. And after that, the TV program became 2 hours a day, okay? Started at 7 and ending at night. That was all television we had. The first hour was what Ceaușescu and his wife did. Who did they visited? What factory he went and he told them what to do and what not to do. And then the weather for 5 minutes. And then after the weather, it was patriotic songs, choir music, and reciting poems, actors reciting poems about Ceaușescu and his wife and the party. Okay? From what I heard, in other countries, they still had entertainment, they still had music. So we were not only lacking food and lacking heat, but we were lacking stuff that could keep our minds off, of this awful stuff that was happening, So at the time, I remember a lot of Romanians, myself included, we were rigging up all kind of TV antennas, on-air TV antennas with high gains, so we can receive broadcasting from neighboring Bulgaria or from Hungary, so we can see their TV shows on our televisions, because we didn't have anything. It was so depressing. This is why when the VCRs started to come on the market, they become so popular because people were hungry for information, were hungry for entertainment, were hungry to see how people outside the communist bloc were living.
Now, that being said, Romania compared to the other countries, it seems like things were getting desperate, especially the people in charge, and it makes sense how it went down at the end. Do you want to talk about that now? You were there that day, right?
About the revolution, yeah. I wasn't in the capital. I was working at the time on an offshore drilling company. I was on the offshore drilling rig, and a day or two before January 21st, I shipped home, and I remember I was at my aunt when Ceaușescu was on television. We heard, because we were listening to Radio Free Europe and Voice of America in Romanian broadcasting. And we heard about what was happening in the town of Timișoara. We heard about the repression. We heard about being crushed under the wheels of armored cars and shot. Ceaușescu came on the 21st trying to quell, he got like a big meeting that he thought is going to help him, to quell all this, unrest. And that was I probably saw what happened.
Yeah, let's talk about it in detail now.
And all of a sudden, he started promising people, I'm going to give you 100 lei more at the salary. That was probably like $10 more, the equivalent of a $10 pay raise, not an hour, a month. Okay, and all of a sudden the people exploded. They rushed over the palace guards and into the Communist Party headquarters. He started. I remember him. He was on TV. He was going like, "Hello, hello." He couldn't even understand what was happening, that the people were hating him so much. He was trying to communicate, and he was saying like, "Hello, hello, what's happening?" And knocking on the microphone and saying, "Keep order, please," or something like that. And then like 5 minutes later, we saw the helicopter taking off of the party headquarters, and people rushing in and appearing at the same balcony where he was like just minutes before. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got out, and I said, this is really serious what's happening. Something is happening. He is running away.
And I
went
can't
to my wife's, she was at work.
Yeah.
We were married just for, I think less than a month and a half. So I went to pick her up and went to the local Communist Party headquarters, where people were already in and throwing out the windows his portraits and the red flags, and they were throwing out the desks and the office machines, like those teletypes machines that they had at the time. Mm-hmm. And they took over, and then after that, we marched for about an hour to the Securitate. Securitate was the secret police, Ceaușescu secret police, and everybody knew what it was, unofficially. Unofficially, they didn't even existed. Okay, it was like the police headquarters. Okay, but they were sharing the same building. And everybody knew that actually the police and Securitate was the same, they were sharing the same building. So let's go to the Securitate.
Wow.
We got there, we got inside, and in the basement we found people that they were arrested over there. And somebody came with a truck. I don't know how they got a truck. Somebody came we tried to get them out of there. And somebody came with a truck, and I remember they put a chain in the back of the truck, and they took out the bars from a window where those prison cells were. So we took them out of their prison cells and freed them. And then it was the happiest day of my life. I'm telling you that, the happiest day of my life. The cars were honking. All you had to do, if you wanted to go to point A to point B in those days, all you had to do was And people that you never met and meet, they were stopping you, giving you a ride wherever you wanted to go.
So people were happy, but I mean, there was a lot of chaos going on at the same time,
And
right?
What? A lot of what?
Chaos?
It was for the first day, it was the happiest people I've seen in my life. As I was saying, all you had to do if you wanted to go from point A to point B was, hey, stop, where do you want to go? Okay, I'll take you there. Okay, everybody was so happy. The next day, though, that's when the chaos and the shooting started. Okay, that's when the terrorists appears, and people, to these days, there are different opinions who these terrorists were, who the snipers were, and they were Ceaușescu loyalists. They were, at the time, the rumor was they were Palestinian terrorists, because Ceaușescu was a very good friend with Yasser Arafat, from the leader of the PLO. And people were saying that he was mistrusting even his bodyguards, even the people who were supposed to protect him. He didn't trust them. So he had these Palestinian students, so-called students, enrolled in universities in Bucharest, which were actually undercover PLO terrorists. And in case he was overthrown, they were supposed to create chaos so he could escape. So we had a couple of, maybe a week or more, maybe 10 days of real chaos. I got a call from the company headquarters. They asked me if I want to come and help. I went to the headquarters. They opened a room that I never even knew. It was just a door to a room nobody ever entered in there. And inside that room, that I never even wondered where it was going, it was full of Kalashnikov's rifles and ammunition.
Wow.
Probably only like a couple of people in the leadership of the company, they were knowing that. So they handed me a rifle and 10 rounds of ammunition. And they say, well, we might have information that he's trying to escape to the Middle East, to Iraq or whatever, to Saddam Hussein. It was very conflicting information flying. People, we heard all the time, we had rumors, well, they're trying to poison the water, the terrorists. They are opening fire from cars. They are opening fire from the rooftop of the central rail station. But we have to, to be on the lookout for the guy. So they posted me to the entrance in the harbor with another couple of guys over there for the next couple of days, and then we did patrols in the harbor. And I remember one of the things that made me very, very happy. It was the winter holidays. It was right before Christmas. And every year we had oranges on the market, one time a year. And we had a ration of oranges, like a kilo of, like 2 pounds of oranges per family a year. That, if you were lucky enough to find them in the store when they were supplying, because it was not a guarantee that you can find them. But once a year, if you were lucky, and if you were like aware where they were distributing them, you could go there and stay in line and get a kilo of oranges. And I remember it was this ship, Greek ship. And the sailors, the Greek sailors, came to us. We were in, with our AK rifles and slings, and, on the lookout for Ceaușescu, which, by the way, was already apprehended immediately, but we didn't know that. And they came to us with bags of oranges. And I think I ate at least 4 or 5 pounds of oranges in a take. Mm-hmm. They were giving that to us, and they were saying, comrades, like in Greek, palikari, we're so happy for you. You got rid of the guy. And they were giving us bags of oranges, okay, for free. Mm-hmm. It was so nice. They were happy for us.
That's great.
Yeah.
So let's go back. What happened to him in reality? So he's shocked he's giving the speech, and the people are actually upset with him, and they're showing disdain. He can't believe it. They escape on the helicopter. Do you know what happens next?
What happened next, he and his wife and a couple of big hotshots in the Communist Party, like another 2 or 3 people, like very high in his hierarchy. He had a plan to escape. But fortunately, the army turned against him. So the pilot of his presidential helicopter got it on radio, put the helicopter down from the aviation headquarters. Put the helicopter down, right now we're gonna shoot you down, okay? So the pilot put the helicopter down, and immediately, like in 10, 15 minutes after that, they came with trucks from a military unit, and they arrested him. They put him in a military unit, some sort like a dorm or something like that. And they kept him over there until on the 25th, actually, on Christmas Day, when they had like some sort of trial. And they convicted him of crimes against humanity, and they put him and his wife against the wall and shot them, okay, in those barracks. And at the time, we were so happy to hear that he was killed. And we actually didn't thought of the consequences of what happened to that day, because that wasn't a real trial, what they did. You know, he didn't have a real defense. Even his lawyer was throwing accusation at him. I mean, he was a monster who ruined millions and millions of people's lives. Of course, we were happy to see him dead. But looking back, it wasn't a real trial, and it wasn't a real justice. It was revenge. And what happened afterwards, what we found out, it was actually Communist Party people from the second echelon that were those that were trying him. Those were the people that were actually put him to death, and they immediately took power after him. Okay? So what they did, those people did, they used a true people's revolution against communism, and they turned it into a coup d'etat, where they took power and they held on to that power for another, I would say, almost 20 years.
Okay. And you were telling someone else in a different interview before, they changed their name, they tried to appear as if they were reformed.
Yes, the new elected president of the country was a guy named Ionescu, which it turns out, we later found out that he used to be the leader of the communist youth of Romania. And he was actually run by the Soviets, and Ceaușescu distrusted him. And he, he put him in after being the leader of the communist youth, Ceaușescu realized that he's a threat. You know, the Soviets wanted him replaced, and he put him like in a minor position, and he became some sort of dissident. But he was a communist through and through. So he was elected as a new democratic president of Romania, having the same type of ideals, Marxist ideals, and he was talking about Ceaușescu was a communist, but what I am looking forward for Romania to build a socialism with human face. This is exactly his word, socialism cu față umană. socialism with a human face. And he was in the same balcony where Ceaușescu was, you know, a couple of months earlier, and when he uttered those words, people exploded in
Positively?
No.
Negatively?
Negatively.
Okay.
It was kind of like reliving the same thing. They were ready to go after him, you know, and then he turned it and he said, no, this is not what I wanted to say. I'm pro-capitalist, I'm pro-democracy, but he let, you know, how we say in Romania, he let the dove fly from his mouth, you know, he was, but you know, the people elected him because it was a lot of misinformation. It was exactly like today in the United States. The national television was on the socialist part. They were calling themselves at first the Front of National Salvation.
Well, that's fluff.
And then they changed their name into the PSD, which is the Socialist Democratic Party, okay? And when the socialists became kind of like, not that the word didn't become so toxic, and they started to explain us, well, there are other socialist parties in Germany, in France, and you know why we're for the people and stuff like that.
So now you have democratic socialists in America.
The democratic socialists in Romania with democratic socialists in the United States, they're one and the same. In Romania, they are former communists, which they realized, hey, you know what? We can hold on to this power. We can have these elections every 4 years. And we can, you know, from time to time become the opposition party, but we can take advantage of what capitalism has to offer. So I would say they're more like the Chinese communists these days, okay, rather than the Romanian communists of old. They realized that, hey, you know what? It works for us. We have the connections. From the old times. We know everybody. We know, who the director of the bank is. We can privatize this company. I mean, rather than being the political commissar or the political activist in the factory, I'd rather be the owner. Okay, we're going to do the privatization of the company. And you know what? I have the connection with the bank director, and he's going to give me a loan, which I'm never going to repay back. And I'm going to be the CEO or the owner of the company, you know?
So we have a lot of connections now to America. I believe you were saying that because of the bad transition that took place after the revolution, that's what eventually led to you to leave the country?
Yes.
So you transitioned to America. What was it like? I mean, you had a wife to take care of, a family. What was it like to make such a journey and commit to it?
Well, we left when we realized that the new political leaders of the country were like second-line communism, and it was very, very, very hard to change. And we had, in 1991, we had a really big protest that lasted months against the new Romanian leadership in the University Plaza in Bucharest. And then finally, when the new leaders, they had it enough, they went after the people, they call in the miners, which were the people less educated from mining towns. They didn't have the information. They were indoctrinated by the television and the radio. And when those guys from Bucharest, from the capital, the President Ionescu and the socialists, they told me, well, democracy is under attack. They want to overthrow us, which are the democratic representative of the people, come and save us. So they put trains at their disposal. They carted them in Bucharest. And the protesters, who were in their large majority intellectuals, students, they got beaten, they got bloodied, they got arrested, they got tortured. I think about another 200 people died. Okay, and consider this was, Romania was no longer, as they were saying, a communist country. Okay, it was like a democratic country. Okay, so that's when we realized I mean, we had a free press. There were like newspapers telling the truth, but it was like today. You know, you have CNN, you have New York Times, you have MSNBC, you have this, the whole list of news outlets, newspapers and cable news, which are all serving the same party. They are basically propaganda outlets, and you have only one source of real news, like Fox News, okay, which lately I don't think even that is viable any longer. And of course, people, they were believing them. So what happened in '91, the repression in Bucharest, and that's when we started thinking about leaving. And we applied for visas for years and years and years, and then finally we got out. We came to the United States. We came here, when I first entered a grocery store in Hemet, California. It's a small town out of LA, like 60 or 70 miles out of LA. And I entered like, I think it was a Ross or a Kroger or something like that. And I saw so much stuff on the shelves and so much light and so many things. And I couldn't even take in. You know, it was like it was a sensory overload, okay? And I started having a terrible headache. So I had to just get out of the store because I couldn't take, you know, it was too much stuff, too much color, too much light in the store that I never seen in my life. So I had to get out. Even today, my wife said, "Oh, come shopping with me." I can't. If I have to get in and out as fast as I can, you know.
And so with that being said, let's close off by talking about any frustrations you have or messages for young people, because right now my generation, whether they know what it is or not, a majority of people my age would choose communism or socialism versus capitalism. And there's an issue of, yes, there are actual radical socialists and communists that think it's going to work this time if we try it, but there's also a lot of useful idiots, that classic historical term. And then there's a lot of people who are just so complacent because they're ungrateful and unaware of how special we really have it here. So with all these different groups and audiences that need to hear this same message, what do you have to say to them, and how do you feel about how much they take it for granted?
What can I tell you? I'm flabbergasted. They are so gullible. They are so unaware of what socialism really is. And sometimes I'm active on Twitter, and I tell them, you know, little stories, and I have that Substack account, and I tell them, go and read what socialism really is. And their response is, oh, that's not real. Mm-hmm. That's not real. And it was only because Ceaușescu was in power. Okay? But this time we know better. We are gonna do it the right way. And my response is always, how arrogant of you. How arrogant of you to believe that you are better than the people who tried communism and socialism in 50 other countries around the world. In Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in South America. You think you are smarter than people in Africa who try socialism? You are smarter than people in Eastern Europe? You are smarter than people in Asia? Why? Why do you think you are smarter than anyone? Just because you are born in a in a country and you're white and you think you are better than anybody else who tried, you are smarter than the people who invented socialism. And they tried to apply it for the first time, the leaders of the Soviet Union. You know, what makes you think you're going to succeed this time? And how many people have to die and suffer for you to try it one more time to see if it works or not? Okay? And the usual answer is, shut up, boomer.
Boomer.
Yeah, shut up, boomer. You don't know.
It's so, there's a lot of layers to this, but there's a lack of respect for elders. There's a lack of gratitude. There's the failure of the education system. This is a multifaceted approach if we're going to really fix it. Do you have any thoughts on what the solutions are? Like, I think we need to upend the education system.
Education
it's gotta
is
happen.
number one. My wife went to college in the United States. She went to Cal State Long Beach, and she had professor preaching socialism, communism in the classroom. And they were younger than her. I mean, she started college in her 50s, okay, and she had professors, they were like in their 30s and 40s, okay? And whenever she attended one of their classes, one art history professor was teaching them, giving them, he was in a class about postmodernism. And my wife says, well, postmodernism is Marxist garbage. And the professor says it's not Marxism, it's under the umbrella of Marxism. And my wife is like, so what's the difference? And all of a sudden he didn't have any answer. And many of her classmates started laughing at their professor, okay? But, you know, there are not many people who go to college that, you know, they came from communist country and had this experience with communism and socialism. And, you know, maybe she changed a couple of minds that day, you know, but how many people are like her in classrooms across America?
Yeah.
And these kids are actually prisoners in classrooms, held prisoners by these Marxist professors that are using the classroom to indoctrinate kids. Okay, so we have to start there. We have to start there. We have to have people like me and like others who experience socialism and communism firsthand, going to campuses and talk about what happened and trying to open minds. I don't know if that's going to work or not. Okay, in my opinion, I'm a little bit pessimist, of a pessimist, and I think it's already too late. You know, there is a generation, not a generation, a couple of generations. We're a couple of generations behind, okay? And it's too late to catch up. It's a little bit too late, and I think it has to get a lot worse before it's getting better. Okay, it has to, for the people in America to experience what we went through, maybe not to the same extent, but they have to experience what a ration card is. They had to experience the prices of the gasoline that we have these days. They have to experience what actually is started happening right now. You don't fall in line with them, they kick you out of your job. Okay, and they cancel you. And even those who today are supporting, today's generation that are supporting infringements on free speech, until it doesn't happen to them and to their family, they're not going to understand. Okay, it has to happen to an entire generation for them to wake up and realize that what they believe in is not what they were told. The socialism is toxic and is dehumanizing. It makes people, you have to fight for survival and for your family survival in socialism. You have to be wary of what you say at all time. You don't know who listens to you. You are afraid to speak. You only have your little own circle of friends, and not even that you can speak freely, and not even then you know that somebody might snitch on you. Okay, it's a terrible way to live, not only in a country that you don't have food and you don't have heat and you don't have a lot of things, but you don't have the freedom. You cannot trust people. You cannot. You have to watch all the time what you are saying. It's an awful way to live. And sooner or later, when socialism consumes the fat of capitalism, the only way to perpetuate its existence is to go after the people, to tighten the screws and to make them to be afraid. When they realize that, okay, this is not where we were sold, this is not good, we want out of this, okay, that's when they start, arresting and beating and imprisoning, because otherwise they cannot keep themselves in power.
Yeah.
You know?
And right now we're kind of living off of the fat of capitalism.
Right now we are living off the fat of capitalism, yes.
Well, geez. Okay, so socialism isn't progress, I think.
That's
what we've learned with that. Thank you for sharing this. I think that I'm also kind of a pessimist with this, but I think we're going to do everything we can to try and fix things.
God, I hope.
Part of that is telling your
Where
stories.
I'm going to live from here, from the United States.
That's what everybody says.
My wife asked me one day. We cross a continent and an ocean to get to America, and when she started to realize what was happening here, I says, I think we stopped too soon, running too soon. We should have run farther now. Where can you go from here?
There's nowhere after this.
Nowhere after this.
You are really helpful to a lot of people with your Substack. So as we close, can you let us know how we can get in touch with that and how everybody listening and watching can connect with you on Substack?
They can subscribe to my Substack account, which is Valachian Rex with 2 L's, valachianrex.substack.com. That's my Substack account.
And we'll link that in the bio for everybody watching. We'll link that, and people will be able to stay in touch with you.
They can read, I have different chapters that deal with, for example, the medical system, how it worked in communist Romania, transportation, how it was, or the socialist economy, how it worked, or actually how it didn't work. Okay, so they can find a lot of information that I remember from Romania, and see how actually it really was. And maybe they can stop buying this propaganda that we have today in the United States in the education system.
We can only hope.
I hope so.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Hey guys, it's Morgan. Before we head out, I just want to say thank you for watching the Freedom Records, and thank you so much to American Journey Experience for letting us film here in Dallas, Texas at their vault. You guys, this place is filled with world and American history artifacts. It's fascinating to learn the details of the objects that are right behind us on set. So thank you to American Journey Experience for letting us film here, and actually, you guys can come here yourself, so go to the link in our bio to learn how you can do that and how you can get connected to this great place.